At my sister's wedding, they laughed at us until they found out who my son really was. I will never forget the cruel smirks when Caroline seated us behind a column near the kitchen doors. "Keep them out of photos," she told the wedding planner. "If anyone asks, say she's a distant cousin, not my sister." Mrs. Whitney, my sister's new mother-in-law, loudly mocked my son's anxiety while Caroline joined in their laughter. One wrong man and look, a single mother with a troubled boy. They thought I was weak because I walked away from wealth 15 years ago. They thought I was nothing because I chose integrity over status. They humiliated my child for sport, treating him like damaged goods while toasting their perfect family. They had no idea who we really were or what I was capable of. I don't believe in forgiveness. I believe in balanced ledgers. And every cruel word, every deliberate humiliation, will be repaid with interest. Some debts require personal collection. The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock, my sister Caroline's wedding announcement embossed in gold foil that caught the morning light. Behind it, a handwritten note slipped out. "For appearance's sake, keep your son in check." I placed it on my desk next to the stack of financial reports I'd been reviewing. Everything in my life had its proper place. My work as an accountant, my carefully maintained apartment, and most importantly, the structured life I'd built for my son, Adam. "Mom?" Adam appeared in my doorway, already dressed for school in Saints, his neatly pressed uniform. At 17, he carried himself with the quiet dignity I'd instilled in him, so different from his father's flashy charisma. "Mail from Aunt Caroline?" "Her wedding invitation," I replied, my voice even. "To Harrison Whitney." Adam's expression didn't change, but I noticed his fingers tighten slightly on the doorframe. The last time we'd seen the Whitneys at Caroline's engagement party, Mrs. Whitney had loudly wondered if Adam's issues were genetic or environmental. Caroline had laughed along. "We don't have to go," Adam said quietly. I considered our options with the same precision I applied to balance sheets. Declining meant isolation from the family information network. Attending meant gathering data, updating my records. "We'll go," I decided. Some debts require a personal touch to collect. Adam nodded. He understood. I'd raised him to see the world clearly, to recognize that kindness was transactional for people like my sister and her crowd. I opened my desk drawer and withdrew a black leather journal, my personal ledger. Inside, I had meticulously documented 15 years of slights, betrayals, and calculated cruelties. Some from Caroline, some from the society she desperately wanted to belong to, and some from Victor, the husband I'd left when I discovered exactly how he built his fortune. I made a new entry. Wedding invitation. Deliberate humiliation anticipated. Cost to be determined. I didn't yet know what would happen at this wedding, but I knew with absolute certainty that whatever occurred, I would record it, calculate its value, and eventually collect. Over breakfast, Adam reviewed his calculus homework while I finalized our wedding preparations. The gift I'd selected was tasteful but modest. A crystal vase from Caroline's registry, not the premium silverware she'd hinted at. I wouldn't waste resources where they weren't appreciated. "What should I say if people ask about father?" Adam asked suddenly, looking up from his equations. The question was reasonable. In Caroline's social circle, single motherhood was treated as a moral failing rather than a deliberate choice. "The truth," I replied. "That you haven't seen him. Since you were 2, nothing more." Adam hesitated. "And if they ask why you left?" "Then they're being inappropriately intrusive, and you can redirect the conversation." I'd never told Adam the full story about Victor. He knew only that his father had been involved in business practices I couldn't support. He didn't know about the evidence I'd taken, the new identities I'd created for us, or the years spent looking over my shoulder. He didn't need to know. Not yet. The Whitney estate sprawled across 5 manicured acres, Caroline's wedding transforming it into a showcase of wealth and exclusivity. Adam and I arrived precisely on time, neither early enough to seem eager nor late enough to draw attention. I wore a simple black sheath dress, elegant but understated. Adam's suit was expertly tailored but deliberately conservative. We were dressed to disappear. Elise. Caroline air-kissed my cheeks, her eyes already scanning the arriving guests over my shoulder. And Adam. How nice you could make it. She didn't introduce us to her fiancé before a coordinator whisked her away. The ceremony proceeded with predictable ostentation. I watched my sister pledge her life to Harrison Whitney, noting how she kept glancing at his mother for approval. Caroline had always measured her worth through others' perceptions. At the reception, we found our assigned table behind a massive floral arrangement, nearly hidden by a column adjacent to the kitchen doors. The other seats held distant relatives. No one had spoken to in years, and one of the caterer's supervisors. I suppose we should be grateful to be included at all, muttered Aunt Judith, who'd been exiled from family functions since her divorce. I said nothing, simply watched. Midway through dinner, raised voices caught my attention. From our shadowed vantage point, we had a clear view of the Whitney family table without being visible to them. I can't believe Caroline seated her own. Sister back there, Mrs. Whitney was saying, crystal champagne flute gesturing vaguely in our direction. Though I suppose with her circumstances. Mother, Harrison cautioned, though his smile never faltered. What? I'm simply saying there are consequences to poor choices. One wrong man, and look, a single mother with a troubled boy. Caroline laughed, a high, brittle sound designed to please. Adam's not troubled exactly, he's just intense. Elise does her best. I felt Adam stiffen beside me. His intensity was actually diagnosed anxiety, triggered by the verbal abuse he'd endured at family gatherings since he was a child. Well, she did disappear with that boyfriend of hers for 2 years, then returns with a baby and no husband. Always the drama queen, your sister. The Whitneys laughed. Caroline joined in. I placed my hand over Adam's, feeling the tremor running through him. Count backwards from 10, I murmured, our ritual for managing his anxiety. 10, 9, 8, he whispered, eyes fixed on his plate. If you're keeping a man around just for financial support, you should at least secure the marriage certificate first, Mrs. Whitney continued, her voice carrying deliberately, though I suppose accountants aren't known for their romantic appeal. More laughter. Adam's counting faltered. I was opening my mouth to suggest we leave when a commotion at the entrance silenced the room. A man stood in the doorway, dark-suited security flanking him. Tall, with silver threading his dark hair, he commanded attention without effort. Victor Kazan, my ex-husband, Adam's father. 15 years ago, I'd discovered the extent of Victor's criminal connections. I'd taken our son and evidence of his crimes, changed our names, and disappeared. Not out of fear, out of principle. Victor's eyes found me immediately. Then, Adam. Alexandra, he said, using my former name. And Alexander. The room went silent. Recognition dawned on faces throughout the hall. Victor Kazan, whose name was whispered in boardrooms and political backrooms, had just identified the woman and boy hidden behind the column as his former wife and heir. Mrs. Whitney's champagne. Glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. I met Victor's gaze evenly, then shifted my attention to my sister and the Whitneys. Their expressions of shock would have been satisfying if I were capable of such simple emotions. Instead, I felt only a cold clarity. No apologies necessary, I said, rising slowly. I keep excellent records. Victor wanted to meet. 3 days after the wedding, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location, a quiet cafe equidistant between our offices. He arrived alone, though I knew his security would be nearby. I'd come from work, bringing financial statements and projected earnings reports as my own form of armor. Alexandra, he began. Elise, I corrected him. For 15 years now. He nodded, accepting the boundary. You look well, successful. I am. And Alexander? Adam. Victor's mouth tightened briefly. Adam, he's remarkable, intelligent, composed. You've raised him well. I have. The silence stretched between us, filled with 15 years of absence. Why now, Victor? Why appear at the wedding? He leaned back, studying me. I never stopped looking for you both. My investigators finally traced you through Caroline. I decided a public appearance would prevent her from denying the connection later. Calculated. Strategic. I'd once admired these qualities in him. What do you want? A relationship with my son. He doesn't know you. I want to change that. I sipped my coffee, considering. Why should I allow it? Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Because I have resources you might find useful. I've managed well enough without your resources. Have you? He glanced out the window, toward the street where my 10-year-old Toyota was parked. The Whitneys, your sister, the way they treated you both. I saw enough in those few minutes. I set down my cup precisely. And I know you, Alexandra. Elise. Whatever name you use, you're the woman who spent 3 years cataloging every irregularity in my business before confronting me. You don't forget. You don't forgive. I said nothing. I'm offering a partnership, Victor continued. Access to Adam, supervised, on your terms, in exchange for my connections, my resources. For what purpose? His smile was thin. Come now. I saw your expression when that woman spoke about our son. When your sister laughed. You're planning something. I'm simply offering to help. I opened my portfolio and withdrew a document I'd prepared the night after the wedding. A contract outlining terms for Victor's reintroduction to Adam's life, with strict boundaries and expectations. Victor glanced at the first page and laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. Supervised visitation and a non-interference clause? You're treating me like a hostile takeover. Aren't you? He sobered. I just want to know my son. And the resources you mentioned? Available to you both, regardless. Consider it 15 years of missed child support. I pushed the contract across the table. Sign it, then we can discuss how your resources might be deployed. As Victor signed, I made mental calculations. The Whitneys' financial situation, Caroline's new marriage, the society that had embraced them while rejecting Adam and me. One question, Victor said, sliding the signed contract back. What changed? You left to protect Adam from me, from my world. Now you're willing to let me back in. I closed my portfolio. Nothing changed. I'm still protecting him. From what? From believing that people can hurt him without consequences. That evening, I explained the situation to Adam. He sat across from me at our kitchen table, processing everything with the careful analysis I'd taught him. So he's been looking for us all this time? Adam asked. Apparently. And he wants to know me now. Yes. Adam studied me. But you're allowing it for another reason. My son understood me better than anyone. The Whitneys humiliated you. Caroline allowed it. I won't let that stand. Is that why we went to the wedding? To collect evidence? Partly. I didn't anticipate your father's arrival, but it presents certain opportunities. Adam nodded slowly. For what? I chose my words carefully. For correction. Balance. People who believe their wealth and status make them untouchable need occasional reminders that actions have consequences. What kind of consequences? That depends on Victor's resources and how deeply the Whitneys have buried their secrets. Adam considered this. I'd like to meet him, my father. We'll arrange it, under controlled conditions. And the Whitneys? Aunt Caroline? I reached across the table, taking his hand. Leave that to me. The first meeting between father and son took place at a restaurant Victor owned but rarely visited. Private, secure, neutral territory. I arrived with Adam 30 minutes early to establish our presence first. Victor entered precisely on time, alone as agreed. He approached our table slowly, his eyes fixed on Adam. You look like your grandfather, he said quietly. My father. Adam straightened, meeting Victor's gaze with the composure I'd instilled in him. I wouldn't know. Victor nodded, accepting the rebuke. Perhaps I can show you photographs sometime if you're interested. Perhaps. I observed their interaction, noting the careful distance Adam maintained. My son was no fool. He understood. what Victor represented: power, resources, a history deliberately hidden from him. "I have questions," Adam said after preliminary pleasantries had been exchanged. "I'll answer what I can," Victor replied. "Why did my mother leave you?" Victor's gaze flickered to me. "Should I answer that?" "Honestly," I said. Victor turned, back to Adam. "I built my fortune through connections with people your mother found morally compromising. When she discovered the extent of those connections, she confronted me. I refused to change my methods. She took you and left. She stole me." "No," Victor corrected firmly. "She protected you." "I didn't understand that then. I do now." The simple acknowledgement surprised me. In our marriage, Victor had never admitted fault. "And what do you want now?" Adam asked. "To know my son, to offer whatever support you'll accept, to make amends if possible." "Amends to who? Me or my mother?" "Both, but I understand that may not be possible." Adam nodded, accepting this. "What resources are you offering my mother?" "Direct. Unexpected." I suppressed a smile. Victor's eyebrows raised slightly. "Financial support. Business connections, information, whatever she needs." "For what purpose?" "That's between your mother and me." Adam's gaze was steady. "No, it isn't. Not if it involves me, not if it involves family." Victor studied Adam for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your mother keeps records of slights, betrayals, injustices. I assume she wants to balance certain accounts regarding your aunt and her new in-laws. And you'll help her." "Yes." "Why?" Victor considered the question. "Because I respected your mother's principles even when they cost me my family. Because I saw how those people treated you both. Because 15 years is a long time to regret the choices I made." Adam looked at me. "Are you going to hurt them?" "Not physically," I replied. "But their pride, their social standing, their financial security, yes. Because of what they said at the wedding. Because of what they've been saying and doing for years. The wedding was merely the final entry in a very long ledger." Adam was quiet for a moment. Then he turned back to Victor. "I'd like to see those photographs of your father sometime." It was a small concession, but Victor's expression revealed its significance. "I'll bring them to our next meeting," he promised. As we prepared to leave, Victor handed me a flash drive. Preliminary information on Whitney Industries. Tax records. Private correspondence. Banking details. I accepted it without comment. "I underestimated you once," Victor said quietly. "I won't make that mistake again." "No," I agreed. "You won't." In the car, Adam was thoughtful. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone cruel. Someone who wouldn't admit he was wrong." I considered this as I drove. People change, or pretend to. Do you believe he's pretending? I chose my words carefully. I believe Victor is sincere about wanting to know you. I also believe he sees an opportunity to regain something he lost. And you? What do you want from him? Exactly what he's providing. Resources, information, leverage. Adam nodded. To make them pay. To restore balance, I corrected. In life, as in accounting, every transaction must balance. Debits and credits. Actions and consequences. And when the ledger is balanced, what then? I didn't answer immediately. In truth, I hadn't looked beyond the settlement of accounts. Then we move forward, I said finally. With or without Victor. With or without Caroline. But on our terms. Not theirs. With Victor's resources supplementing my own skills, I set my plan in motion with meticulous precision. Like any good accountant, I began with due diligence. First, I established a shell company that offered exclusive investment opportunities to the Whitney family and their closest associates. Their greed made this almost too easy. One mention from Victor about potential returns, and they were practically begging to invest. Meanwhile, Adam began supervised meetings with Victor. I watched their cautious interactions evolve into genuine connection. Victor was careful, respectful of boundaries. He shared stories of his own childhood in Russia, his early struggles in America, but never pressured Adam about the future of his empire. "He's different than I expected," Adam told me after their fourth meeting. "How so?" "He listens. Actually listens." Adam hesitated. "Is that why you were with him once, before you knew about his business?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes. Your father always had the ability to make people feel seen. It's a powerful quality." "Like you do with numbers," Adam said. "You see patterns others miss." I smiled. Exactly like that. 3 months after the wedding, phase 2 began. An anonymous tip led to an IRS audit of Whitney Industries. My careful analysis had revealed years of tax evasion through offshore accounts, information I'd provided to the proper authorities, through untraceable channels. Caroline called in a panic. "Elise, you have to help. Harrison's family is being audited. They need a good accountant." "I specialize in corporate accounting, not tax evasion," I replied. "What?" Nobody said anything. It was a figure of speech, Caroline." She hesitated. "Could you at least recommend someone?" "Please, Elise, I know we're not close, but I'm trying." I gave her the name of a former colleague, competent but ruthlessly ethical. He would find every irregularity I'd already discovered. Next came Harrison. My investigation had uncovered 3 separate affairs, including one with Caroline's maid of honor. I arranged for evidence to be delivered to Harrison's business partners just before a crucial merger negotiation. The merger collapsed. The Whitney family's financial stability began to crumble. Caroline appeared at my door unannounced one evening, eyes red from crying. "Can we talk? Sister to sister?" I let her in. Adam was with Victor for dinner. "Everything's falling apart," she said, collapsing onto my sofa. "The audit, Harrison's business problems, rumors about affairs. Mother Whitney barely speaks to me now." I offered tea. She accepted with shaking hands. "I need to ask you something," Caroline said finally. "At the wedding, when Victor appeared, you said you keep excellent records. What did you mean?" "Exactly what I said." Are you behind what's happening to us?" I met her gaze steadily. "Why would I be?" "Because of how we treated you, how I treated you." Her voice dropped. "How we talked about Adam." "And how was that, exactly?" Caroline looked away. "I didn't mean for them to be so cruel. It was just a seating arrangement." I went to my desk and retrieved my phone. Pressed play on a recording. Caroline's voice instructing the wedding planner. "Keep them out of photos. If anyone asks, say she's a distant cousin, not my sister." Caroline's face crumpled. I was trying to impress them. "You don't understand how important the Whitneys were. Please, Elise. We're family." "Family," I repeated, the word hollow. "Was I family when you watched Mrs. Whitney mock Adam's anxiety? When you laughed at her jokes about my career, my choices? I made a mistake. People make mistakes." "No," I said quietly. "A mistake is accidental. What you did was deliberate. You chose status over your nephew's dignity, over your sister's respect. What do you want? An apology?" I almost pitied her then. Almost. "I don't believe in forgiveness, Caroline. I believe in balanced ledgers." The next morning, Caroline called again. Her voice was different, controlled, calculated. "I've been thinking about our conversation," she said. "You're right. What I did was inexcusable. But destroying Harrison's family is going too far." "Is it?" "They're just snobs, Elise. Unpleasant, judgmental people. They don't deserve financial ruin." "What do they deserve exactly? Another invitation to mock my son? Another opportunity to diminish me in your eyes?" Caroline was quiet for a moment. "What if I make amends? Publicly acknowledge how wrong we were? Harrison, too? Even his mother? And why would they agree to that? Because they're desperate. The audit found everything, Elise. Everything. They're facing criminal charges unless they can negotiate a settlement. Harrison's affairs are about to become public. We need help. I let her words hang in the air, savoring the shift in power. For 15 years, Caroline had positioned herself as the successful sister, the one who'd made all the right choices. Now she was begging for intervention. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked finally. "A family dinner. The Whitneys, you and Adam, me. Even Victor, if you want. We apologize, acknowledge how wrong we were. In exchange, you help us navigate this crisis." "And if I refuse?" Caroline's breathing hitched. "Then I lose everything. My marriage, my standing, my future." "How terrible for you," I said softly. "Elise, please. I'm begging you." I considered her proposal, testing it for tricks or evasions. Found none. Caroline was genuinely desperate. "I'll think about it," I said, and ended the call. Later that day, I met Victor for lunch. We'd established a tentative working relationship over the past months, centered primarily on Adam, but expanding to include our shared project of Whitney destruction. "Caroline called," I told him. "She's offering public apologies in exchange for our help." Victor's expression was thoughtful. The audit hit harder than anticipated. Harrison's father is considering turning state's evidence against his business partners. "Is that something you orchestrated?" "Indirectly. I merely suggested certain lines of inquiry to the right authorities." I nodded. "Caroline wants a family dinner. Apologies all around. Will you accept?" I considered the question, weighing variables as I would any financial decision. "What would be the strategic advantage?" Victor smiled slightly. "They're offering surrender, Alexandra, Elise. The terms are yours to dictate." "I don't want surrender," I said. "I want consequences." "Then use the dinner to deliver them." After lunch, I called Caroline back. "I've considered your proposal. The dinner will be at Victor's restaurant. 7 o'clock tomorrow. The entire Whitney family must attend." "Victor's restaurant?" Caroline's voice trembled. "They're terrified of him, Elise." "Then they shouldn't have mocked his son." I hung up before she could respond. That evening, I discussed the dinner with Adam. He was reviewing college applications. His future, not his father's empire. "You don't have to attend," I told him. "This is my battle, not yours." Adam looked up from his laptop. "Will they apologize for what they said about me?" "They'll try." "Will they mean it?" I considered the question. "They'll mean they're sorry. They underestimated us. They'll regret the consequences of their actions. But genuine remorse for how they treated you?" "No." Adam nodded, unsurprised. "I want to be there, to see them understand who we really are." I studied my son, his composure, his clarity. The anxiety that had once crippled him in social situations had diminished over the months since the wedding, not through forgiveness, but through witnessing consequences. "Then we'll face them together," I agreed. The following evening, we arrived at Victor's restaurant 30 minutes early. The private dining room had been prepared according to my specifications. The table arranged so the Whitneys would face the door, backs to the wall. Symbolic imprisonment. Victor joined us, dressed impeccably. "Everything is ready, including the documentation you requested." I nodded. On each plate designated for a Whitney family member lay a folder containing personalized evidence of their indiscretions. Mrs. Whitney's secret cosmetic, surgeries and prescription drug dependencies, Mr. Whitney's tax frauds and bribery schemes, Harrison's affairs and gambling debts, Caroline's social climbing manipulations, recorded and transcribed. Adam surveyed the table. "This is more than just making them apologize." "Yes," I acknowledged. "This is showing them exactly who they've been dealing with, who they chose to humiliate. And after tonight? After tonight, the ledger will be closer to balanced." The maitre d' appeared at the door. "Ms. Kazan, your guests have arrived." I nodded. "Show them in." I watched Caroline enter first, her usual confident stride reduced to hesitant steps. Behind her, Harrison moved like a man approaching execution. His parents followed, Mrs. Whitney's surgically enhanced features rigid with suppressed fury. "Welcome," I said, remaining seated. Please, join us. As they moved to their assigned seats, I noted their expressions when they saw the folders. Fear, recognition, the beginnings of understanding exactly what kind of accounting was about to take place. Caroline met my gaze across the table, her eyes pleading. I offered nothing in return but the cold precision that had sustained me for 15 years. Well, I said, as they settled uncomfortably into their chairs, I believe you have something to say to my son. Mrs. Whitney spoke first, her voice strained. Adam, I want to apologize for my comments at the wedding. They were insensitive and inappropriate. The words were correct, but her tone conveyed only self-preservation. I glanced at Adam, watching his reaction. His face remained composed, unreadable to anyone but me. I could see the subtle tightening around his eyes. Recognition of insincere contrition. Is that all? I prompted. Mrs. Whitney's gaze dropped to the folder before her. I should never have spoken about your anxiety or your mother's choices. It was cruel and unfounded. And? I pressed. Her jaw tightened. And I deeply regret my behavior. Open your folder, Mrs. Whitney, I instructed. Her hand trembled slightly as she complied. Inside lay documentation of her 3 secret cosmetic surgeries, prescription drug dependencies, and financial arrangements with her private physician to keep both hidden from her husband and social circle. Your anxiety about aging and relevance, I said quietly, has cost you nearly $400,000 over the past 5 years. Money drawn from accounts your husband doesn't monitor. I wonder what your social circle would think of your natural beauty if they knew. Mr. Whitney stiffened. What is this? This is accountability, I replied. Please, open your folder. Next. His folder contained evidence of tax fraud spanning 15 years, copies of emails discussing bribes to city officials, and records of shell companies used to hide assets during his brother's divorce. Your son inherited his moral flexibility from you, I observed, though his execution lacks your attention to detail. Harrison's folder was thicker than his parents', detailed accounts of his affairs, including one with Caroline's maid of honor that had begun 6 months before the wedding. Financial records showing substantial gambling debts concealed from his family. A positive paternity test connected to a former assistant who had been quietly relocated to another state. You'll find copies of all these documents have been securely archived, Victor added, speaking for the first time. Any attempt to retaliate against Elise or Adam would result in their immediate distribution to relevant authorities, business partners, and social connections. Caroline was last. Her folder was thinnest, but perhaps most damning. Transcripts of conversations with wedding planners specifically discussing how to minimize my presence. Email exchanges with friends mocking Adam's anxiety. Social media messages, where she claimed to have escaped her family background through her advantageous marriage. And finally, the recording from the wedding planner. Keep them out of photos. If anyone asks, say she's a distant cousin, not my sister. Caroline didn't open her folder. She already knew what it contained. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaking her makeup. I was wrong, deeply wrong. You were, I agreed. The question is what happens now? Mrs. Whitney looked up sharply. What do you want, money? I almost laughed. I want nothing from you. This dinner isn't a negotiation, it's notification. Of what? Harrison demanded. Of consequences, Adam replied, speaking for the first time. His voice was steady, confident. You chose to mock and belittle us because you believed we were powerless. You were mistaken. I nodded to Victor, who produced additional documents from his briefcase. The IRS investigation will conclude next week, I explained. The findings will be referred to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution unless a settlement is reached immediately. That settlement will include substantial penalties and back taxes. Mr. Whitney paled. How substantial? Approximately 60% of your liquid assets, Victor replied. That's impossible, Mr. Whitney protested. We'd be ruined. Not ruined, I corrected. Merely reduced to living within Legal means. I turned to Harrison. Your gambling debts have been purchased by one of Victor's subsidiaries. They'll be called due next month. Additionally, your correspondence with your mistresses will be provided to Caroline's divorce attorney tomorrow morning. Caroline gasped. Divorce? Unless you prefer to stay married to a man who was sleeping with your maid of honor while you planned your wedding, I said. Harrison's face contorted with rage. You vindictive Careful, Victor interrupted coldly. Remember who you're addressing. I turned back to Caroline. As for you, sister, no financial penalties, no public humiliation, just the knowledge that every relationship you've cultivated through lies and social climbing will disintegrate over the coming months. The Whitneys will be disgraced. Your marriage will end. Your friends will distance themselves. You'll be exactly what you feared most. Irrelevant. Caroline's tears flowed freely now. Why? After all these years, why now? Because at the wedding you crossed a final line, I replied. You allowed these people to mock my son to his face. You joined their laughter. You thought we would simply accept it, as we've accepted your previous cruelties. I'll change, Caroline pleaded. I'll make it right. Perhaps you will, but not with me. I closed my copy of the documents. Our business is concluded. Mr. Whitney leaned forward. Listen to me very carefully. You may think you've won, but people like us always recover. In a year or two at most, we'll be back, and we won't forget this. Adam met his gaze evenly. Neither will we. The difference is we have proof of your crimes. You have only wounded pride. Mrs. Whitney pushed her chair back abruptly. This dinner is over. Yes, I agreed. It is. The elder Whitneys departed first, shoulders rigid with suppressed fury. Harrison followed, not looking at Caroline. She remained seated, staring at her closed folder. You planned this from the beginning, she said finally. Even before the wedding. No, I corrected her. I've been recording your betrayals for 15 years. The wedding was simply the final entry. You chose your side, Caroline, now you'll live with that choice. And if I apologize? If I truly make amends? Make amends to yourself, I replied. I've balanced our accounts. After they had all gone, Adam, Victor, and I remained at the table. It went as expected, Victor observed. Adam nodded. They're angry, but frightened. They'll comply. Yes, I agreed. For now. Victor studied me. You're not satisfied. The ledger isn't fully balanced yet. What more do you want? Adam asked. I considered the question. Public acknowledgement, something beyond this private reckoning. Victor smiled slightly. I may have an opportunity for that. Prestige magazine is planning a feature on power couples. The editor is an old connection of mine. Caroline would do anything to be featured in Prestige, Adam noted. Exactly, I said, the final piece of my plan falling into place. 1 month later, the IRS settlement became official. Whitney Industries survived but was severely diminished. Mr. Whitney resigned as CEO, citing health concerns. Mrs. Whitney's social standing collapsed when rumors of her secret surgeries spread through her circle, an anonymous tip to a particularly vindictive gossip columnist. Harrison's gambling debts were called due, forcing him to liquidate his personal assets. The paternity suit became public knowledge when the mother decided to pursue child support. Caroline filed for divorce, citing infidelity and financial deception. Throughout this controlled demolition, I maintained my distance. I neither gloated nor intervened. I simply observed the natural consequences of my accounting. Adam thrived during this period. His anxiety diminished as he witnessed the dismantling of those who had mocked him. More importantly, he began building a relationship with Victor, cautious but increasingly genuine. They shared an analytical approach to problems, a thoroughness I recognized from my own methods. You're not upset about them spending time together? My colleague asked one day after Victor had picked Adam up from my office for lunch. No, I replied. Adam knows who raised him, who protected him. My colleague nodded. Still, it must be strange. After 15 years, I considered this. Life is about adaptation, recalculation when variables change. And Victor is a changed variable? He's a useful one, I said, returning to my work. What I didn't express was how calculated my approach to Victor remained. He had resources Adam could benefit from, connections, opportunities. I would deny my son nothing that would strengthen his position in life, even if that meant allowing limited access to his father. Meanwhile, Caroline called repeatedly, left voicemails alternating between tearful apologies and desperate pleas for help navigating her divorce. I deleted them all. The final phase of my plan was approaching. Prestige magazine had announced their special issue on power couples. Caroline, desperate to salvage some portion of her social standing, had been lobbying for inclusion. Victor's connection with the editor ensured that she received an invitation for an interview, scheduled at Le Ciel, the same restaurant where Mrs. Whitney had once loudly speculated about my fitness as a mother, while Caroline nodded along. Everything was in position for the final balancing of accounts. 6 months after the wedding, Prestige magazine announced their special issue featuring Power Couples Redefining Society. Caroline, despite her recent setbacks, desperately lobbied for inclusion. Her marriage to Harrison was fracturing under financial strain and infidelity rumors, but appearances remained paramount. The editor, a college classmate of Victor's, agreed to interview Caroline and Harrison at Le Ciel, the same restaurant where Mrs. Whitney had once loudly speculated about my fitness as a mother, while Caroline nodded along. I arrived 15 minutes before their scheduled interview, Victor and Adam accompanying me. We were seated at the center table, the one Caroline had always coveted during her desperate climb into Whitney territory. The maitre d' greeted me by name. Ms. Kazan, your regular table is ready. I'd never dined here before. Victor's influence. At work. When Caroline entered with Harrison, her eyes found me immediately. Confusion crossed her face, followed by dawning comprehension as the magazine editor approached. Not her table, but mine. Elise, perfect timing, the editor said warmly. We're so excited about featuring you as our cover story. Caroline froze. In the entryway, Harrison's hand tense on her elbow. The photographer began setting up lighting around our table. Victor sat comfortably beside Adam, their shared features striking in the camera flash. I gestured Caroline over. Join us. Family. Should celebrate together, shouldn't they? Trapped by social convention, they approached. Harrison's face was ashen. The IRS had frozen his accounts the previous day. What is this? Caroline hissed, maintaining her smile for the photographer. Balance, I replied simply. The editor beamed. When Victor told me about his ex-wife's financial genius, how she's been the secret architect behind the restructuring of his legitimate businesses, I knew we had our cover story. The woman who tamed the Kazan empire. Brilliant! Caroline's smile slipped. But you said this was about Harrison and me. Oh, we'll mention all the family connections, the editor assured her. Though I understand the Whitney situation is complicated at the moment. On cue, the maitre d' approached again. Ms. Kazan, the additional party has arrived. Mrs. Whitney entered, unaware of what awaited her. She stopped short upon seeing us all together. Perfect timing, I said, echoing the editor. We were just discussing family legacies. The photographer captured Mrs. Whitney's expression of shock as Victor rose to greet her. Mrs. Whitney, he said smoothly, I believe you've met my son, Adam. The troubled boy you mentioned at the wedding? Adam stood, poised and confident. The anxiety that had once gripped him in these social situations was nowhere visible. I don't recall saying, Mrs. Whitney stammered. No need to explain, I interrupted. We have the recording. The color drained from her face. I turned to the editor. Actually, I think there's a more interesting angle for your story. How about truth and consequences? How the Kazan family exposed financial fraud and social hypocrisy. The editor's journalistic instincts kindled. Go on? I opened my portfolio, removing copies of the Whitney tax documents, Harrison's correspondence with his mistresses, and transcripts of Caroline's social climbing machinations. Everything is public record now, I said quietly. The IRS investigation, the failed merger, The pending divorce filings. Caroline gasped. Harrison hadn't told her about the divorce yet. You did this, Caroline whispered. All of it. No, I corrected her. You did this. I simply ensured there were consequences. Mrs. Whitney found her voice. You vindictive. Careful, Victor cut in. Remember who you're addressing. The photographer continued clicking, capturing it all. Later, after they'd fled the restaurant, and the interview had evolved into an exclusive on financial ethics and social authenticity, Adam and I walked to my car. Was it worth it? He asked. Seeing them like that? I considered the question with the same precision I applied to everything. It wasn't about satisfaction, Adam. It was about correction. Like balancing books. Exactly. Debits and credits must align. Actions and consequences must balance. Adam nodded. They'll never recover, will they? The Whitneys. Caroline. They might. People rebuild, but never to what they were before. I unlocked the car. More importantly, they'll never look at you, at us, the same way again, because now they know who we really are. No, I said, starting the engine, because now they know who they really are. 3 weeks later, I received another invitation, this one to join the board of a prestigious financial firm. The same, one that had rejected my application 5 years earlier, citing cultural fit concerns. I added it to my ledger, then closed the book. Some accounts were finally balanced. The Prestige magazine issue hit newsstands with our family on the cover. Adam between Victor and me, all of us dressed in understated elegance. The headline read, The Kazan Legacy, Integrity in a World of Appearances. The article detailed Victor's business transformation under my guidance, Adam's academic achievements, and our family's commitment to accountability. It mentioned the Whitneys only briefly, a cautionary footnote about the dangers of financial impropriety and social cruelty. My phone rang constantly in the days following publication. Former clients, potential partners, even distant relatives, suddenly remembering our connection. Caroline called once. I let it go to voicemail. I'm leaving town, her message said. Starting over somewhere new. I just wanted to say I understand now what you did, why you did it. I hope someday you'll call me. I deleted the message without responding. That evening, Adam and I had dinner with Victor. It had become a weekly tradition, carefully maintained boundaries gradually softening into something resembling family. Harvard accepted me, Adam announced. Full scholarship. Victor raised his glass. Congratulations, though I would have been happy to. I know, Adam interrupted, but I want to do this myself. I smiled, pride warming my chest. My son. Independent. Strong. Untouched by the shadow of Whitney contempt. To Adam, I said, raising my glass, and to consequences. Victor's gaze met mine over the rim of his glass. And to ledgers finally balanced. After dinner, walking home, through the cool evening air, Adam asked the question I'd been anticipating. What happens next? With us and Father? I considered my answer carefully. That depends on what you want. And what you want, Adam added. Your ledger with him can't be fully balanced. Perceptive, my son. Always. No, I acknowledged. But some debts can be renegotiated. Adam nodded. You're considering his offer to formalize your role in his companies. I'm considering it, I confirmed. The opportunity to transform his organization completely is appealing, to build something legitimate, ethical. Like you did with me, Adam said quietly. I looked at my son, 17 now, nearly a man. Everything. I'd done, every account I'd balanced, had been to protect him. To show him that cruelty had consequences, that dignity could be defended. You were never a project, Adam. You were my purpose. He smiled, a rare, unguarded expression. I know, and watching you stand up to them taught me more than any lecture about self-respect ever could. We walked in comfortable silence for a while. Caroline will try to reconnect someday, Adam observed. Probably. Will you let her? I had considered this already, analyzing potential variables with my usual precision. That would depend on genuine change, I said finally. Not just words, actions, consistent over time. People can change, Adam said. Even father has. To a degree, I qualified. Victor has evolved his methods, not his essential nature. Caroline would need to transform her core values. Is that possible? Possible, I acknowledged. But unlikely. People rarely change their fundamental nature. They simply become better at disguising it, or worse, at hiding it when pressed. We reached our apartment building. As we rode the elevator up, Adam asked, "Do you ever regret any of it? Taking me away from father? Changing our names? The years of watching and waiting?" I didn't hesitate. Never. Every choice I made was to protect you, to ensure you grew up understanding that power comes in many forms, not just wealth or social position. The power of accountability, Adam said. Exactly. In our apartment, I went directly to my desk. Opened the leather-bound ledger that had tracked 15 years of sleights and strategies. The final page contained the Prestige magazine feature, Caroline's voicemail transcription, and notes on the Whitney's financial collapse. Below, them, I wrote, account settled, balance restored. I closed the book, but didn't return it to the drawer. Instead, I placed it on the shelf beside my accounting texts. A record, a reminder. The next morning, I called Victor. "I've considered your offer," I said without preamble. "And I accept with conditions. Complete autonomy over financial restructuring. Board positions for my choosing, not yours. And a trust for Adam that remains under my sole control." Victor's laugh held genuine amusement. "Still negotiating from strength, I see." "Always." "I accept your terms," he said. "When do you want to start?" I glanced at my calendar, at the board position I'd already accepted, at the consulting contracts. I'd established over 15 years of careful career building. "I'll start Monday," I decided, under my own name, my real name. "Alexandra Kazan," Victor said, testing it. Yes, it's time Adam and I stopped hiding. After we hung up, I looked out my window at the city below. For 15 years, I'd operated in the shadows, building my own power while documenting others' weaknesses. Now I would step into the light, not as Victor's ex-wife or Caroline's disgraced sister, but as myself, Alexandra Kazan. The woman who had protected her son, balanced her ledgers, and reclaimed her name. Not through forgiveness, through accountability, not through surrender, through precision. Some debts could never be fully repaid, but they could be acknowledged, recorded, and balanced to the last decimal point. Just as I had always taught my son, just as my ledger had always shown, some accounts were finally balanced,